And that just unlocked my off the tops and my roundhouses and cutbacks. Once those two things combined, I was like, that was a full man turn. So mantras, it's been a big part of my coaching. It's like 3 words that are going to trigger your mind and body to react in a certain way, to take off the autopilot that happens to all of us as we surf.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Basis Podcast. We got my buddy Chapin Kreuter here, who is one of the OG online surf coaches. I remember seeing your videos on YouTube, I don't know how many years ago, but I always remember thinking, this is the best stuff. And I always wish that there was more of it. And I kind of wondered what happened. And then I knew that you were doing surf retreats and whatnot, but I guess I'd kind of lost track of where you were. And then I was doing a podcast with my buddy, Johnny, and he mentioned you, and he was like, you got to do a podcast with Chapin. So I'm very very honored and excited to have you here. So thanks for joining, buddy.
Hey, Van. Thank you very much. I guess we're both doing the name game right now.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll get each other's names at some point. Cool. So, yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk about, your journey through surfing and then what you've learned as a surf coach. But why don't we just start from the beginning? Where are you from? Where did you get into surfing?
I'm from Orange County, Costa Mesa, which is basically Newport Beach area, and grew up in the waves, but not necessarily as a surfer. I mean, my parents took me to the beach as a young kid just to, get some of the energy out, and always trying to stand up on my bodyboard. My dad wasn't a surfer. My mom wasn't into surfing. So it's just me kind of observing the older guys, wanting to be like them. And around 8 or 9, a neighbor's dad gave me a board, and my dad bought me a wetsuit at the Frog House. We went up to Dog Beach in Huntington, and
nice.
He asked the guy coming in, what should my son do? And he's like, just get out there. And so my dad stood on the beach and let me paddle out by myself at 8 or 9. And
nice.
Yeah, I just addicted from the start. The second I stood up on my boogie board was the second I was like, this is all I want to do the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, I know that feeling. That's so cool. And so 8 or 9 is when you started boogie boarding, and then you just started standing up, or what? Were you boogie boarding before then? And then that was when you first got your first proper surfboard?
Yeah, boogie boarding before that, and then first surfboard 8 or 9, and then within that year, parents started taking me on weekends to Doheny. Wednesdays we'd have half days, so I'd get to the beach on half days, and then it didn't progress at all. Thought I was really good because I was standing up, and then I bet my best friend when I was say 10 or something like that. Matt Gorman lives on the North Shore now, and I went surfing with him and was just blown away. He was going down the line and kind of doing turns, and I was still going straight. So very humbled by that experience. And when my parents divorced at 12, my dad moved down to 39th Street in Newport Beach, which allowed me to surf, before school, after school, and then right before dark every day, just obsessed. And, and that really helped me progress really quickly. Within the first year, everyone started saying oh, look, he's starting to get a lot better. And, I was feeling more confident, and Yeah.
And was, you hear about so many great surfers that go through something personal, but then the ocean becomes their refuge. And did you have that kind of relationship with the ocean?
With the the trauma of the parents divorcing, there might have been something subconscious about it, but I was at an age where I could conceptualize it, and I was in therapy for it. And it turned out to be more of a freedom thing for me, because my parents maintained a really healthy relationship, and my dad was coming over for dinner almost every night of the week. Oh, wow. In the beginning for the first 2 years, because he just moved right across the street. And so I definitely know it's affected my perspective on relationships and definitely affected my relationships in general. But the whole moving to the beach and the ocean was just sense of freedom, because I was always doing sports I didn't like. I didn't want to play soccer. I didn't want to play tennis. I didn't want to do all the things I was forced to do. And then when I found something I loved, it was such a taboo sport still in the early 90s that my parents didn't support it, So it was I had to pay for all my own gear. I had to pay for my entry into all the contests. They never came and watched. It was just, you can do what you want, but it's, and they never said it out loud, but it's like, it's very clear if they came to every single soccer game and then didn't show up to any of my surf comps, that they weren't like huge fans,
But they knew that you loved it though, right? Did you communicate that to them?
Definitely, of course. I think that for the whole family, just the divorce kind of just sent us all on our own path. And me and my sister haven't talked about it in depth, but like everyone was just to fend for themselves. Like dad was going to LA to hang out with a new girlfriend. Mom had a new boyfriend. They were like doing their thing. I was 12, just like having the best time of my life on my bike on the beach with the friends. Like nobody was checking in on me. And, my sister's 2 years younger. And I think, that was hard for her, but she also found a family that just took her in, and like, we all just kind of went our separate ways, even though like we had Sunday at Bob's, which is my dad's name, every Sunday. And like, we still dinners and stuff, but life just kind of opened up for me and I could do whatever I wanted.
Right. And then you got to go and surf your brains out with your buddies. And that must have been a magical way to grow up in some ways.
It was the best. I mean, it was the first taste of freedom I ever had that in hindsight, I can compare to what I felt for the first time when I landed in Costa Rica at like 18, or the first time I jumped in a van and like drove to Costa Rica at like 20. And just like that sense of just knowing I do whatever I wanted was the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Freedom is one of those things that I think as a surfer, we all chase. I mean, the feeling of being in the ocean alone when the waves are pumping, you just feel like you're out there, and that's a magical feeling just to get away from it all. So it makes sense that surfing is the thing that you got obsessed with. So then as you, so you're a 12-year-old kid and you start to get into comps. Were you a naturally gifted surfer? How would you describe your progression as you learned, starting from, that age and got better? If you were competing, it sounds like you were pretty decent, but what was that like for you?
No, and it's such a good question, dude. I'm glad you asked, because I think it's the reason I've stuck with it for over 30 years is that I wasn't gifted. I was a gifted athlete. You could give me a ball and I could juggle it and I could hit it and I could do whatever I wanted as like more of an elite athlete in those sports, but put me on a surfboard and like I wasn't gifted, being 12 years old on almost 6 feet, not very flexible, getting to my feet super slow. Obviously surfing is a multi-discipline sport. You have to learn how to read the ocean. You have to learn how to paddle correctly, timing. I mean, we'll get into all that, but no, dude, not at all. And like, even though I got better, I progressed a lot in that short period of time when I was living with my dad. My closest friends were they were gifted. I mean, they were getting first place in every comp. I forget, NSAs, I think we were doing at the time. And I think the best I ever did was like a high school comp. I got maybe third because nobody showed up, and like there's 3 of us in the water kind of thing, so no, 100% not gifted. And the only reason I still surf today is because I have realized over time that I really like a challenge, and that's what's kept me focused on just kind of trying to always progress and figure out why certain aspects of surfing have always been difficult for me. Like I still drag my knee when I pop up.
Well, it's so interesting because I was literally thinking that as well when you were talking about how your parents would go to your soccer games but not go to any of your comps. I was almost like, that must have made you want to get in. It could do one of two things. It could either make you quit surfing or it'd make you want to surf even better just to prove them wrong. Like, I'm actually going to do this, or I'm, to want something so bad that like you're doing it, even though your family is kind of rejecting it or ignoring it, must have a interesting, like it must add some kind of interesting drive to the way you approach it. So just the way I think if you're not good at something and then you really get obsessed with like, I got to overcome this, it adds a little fire to you,
Yeah. I was at that age where I think my parents' opinion of me did matter, but I was more trying to fit in with my friends and be accepted by my friends. So one thing I was always jealous of was that the friends I had who grew up surfing with surf families who accelerated at it had this like network of families that they all like went to Mexico together and did all this cool shit. where I always felt isolated and not a part of that. And I was always like on the fringe. I felt accepted by these people and, but, my parents weren't part of that crew. And so it was just a very isolating feeling, but also it was where I felt the most at home was in the ocean with these people.
Yeah. Yeah. So then did you eventually start to catch up with your buddies and your peers, or like, how did that all work out? So as you begin to progress, you get into high school, like middle school, high school, where did things go from there?
I think my progression didn't accelerate in the way I wanted it to. I had expectations of myself that were never met. And that started, conflicting with my identity, and then surf culture at the time, and probably still is maybe to a certain extent. A lot of heavy partying as I got in my high school years, like just drinking and partying and getting depressed as well. I battled with a bit of depression when I was like 15, and I was starting to get burnt out on it. The competition thing wasn't fun. The whole culture wasn't fun. My friends were, a lot of them were like pretty gnarly drug addicts at this point. And although I never took to drugs, I definitely always like enjoyed a drink. And I found myself kind of thirsting for something else. So a friend in sophomore year in math encouraged me to go back out for soccer. I'd always played soccer because I was kind of forced to. I was decent at it. And it's kind of a bit of a salvation. I got back into soccer in high school, played pretty casual while I was still very much surfing, sophomore and junior year. And then something happened when I was a senior, 17 years old, going into my senior year, where it's like, I quit. I was done with surfing. I had this moment in Europe with my father. My dad took me and my sister for a 3-week trip to Europe when I was 17 before my senior year. And I found myself standing in the Louvre in Paris in this beautiful museum full of the most like ancient, beautiful art I'd ever seen. And it was the first time in a long time, if ever, I'd ever really felt at peace and seen so much beauty around me. And that feeling didn't leave, number one, and I wanted to maintain it. So I devised a plan that because I was naturally gifted at soccer, I would go back and completely commit myself to it and try to make it as a professional athlete and try to make it back to Europe. So for the next 5 years, that's all I did. I just obsessed again. That's one thing we all have in common as surfers is obsessive nature.
Yeah.
And so I think, I maybe surfed a handful of times over the next 5 years and just obsessed over soccer and got myself through college, not with soccer, but it just kept me focused enough to make enough good grades that I could get myself into schools and then walk on. So my goal was to make it as a UCLA soccer player. I thought that would be like a good goal to have. And so I did junior college and focused and walked on eventually at UCLA and made the team. And then
dude, that's an awesome story.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, it was one of those moments that you can see hard work does pay off if you really dedicate yourself to something.
Yeah. And that's so interesting because it's weird, but in my head, my natural thought is like soccer would be more competitive because there's just more people that play soccer.
Yeah.
But I guess you were naturally talented at it.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is,
please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about soccer, it's, one of my good buddies, Kay, he's like really, good soccer player, super, talented as well. And it just, the way he describes it is it just requires full dedication and it's extremely tough on your body. A lot of these athletes don't make it for very long into their careers. They get injuries and all kinds of stuff. But it seems harder to me to walk onto the UCLA team than it does although I guess surfing is super competitive as well. And it's a smaller world too. So I don't know how those would equate, but regardless, walking onto the UCLA team is a pretty awesome achievement.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd love to unpack that a little bit with you because I've thought a lot about the different nature of what I attempted to do. And, as I was getting into soccer, surfing was such a love and a passion of mine and an obsession as well. And then the soccer thing came around and there was so much structure in there. Like you walked onto a field that was marked by chalk and you had these rules to play by. So I could take this hyper competitive nature I had within myself that I wasn't succeeding at in surfing and take it onto a soccer field where I was very successful. And that balance made way more sense to me. Like I still surfed, a lot less, but like surfing then became more fun. I was enjoying it. It was a release. It was what I originally got into it for. And then I could take that competitiveness and just leave it all on the field, dude. The fucking anger, the hatred for whatever it was in the moment. I just like go and did it on the field, and I'd go meditate in the water kind of thing. And that was a really nice, healthy balance for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because a lot of people that grow up surfing end up getting burned out on surfing. They just, even my buddies that, I live in Brooklyn. I have a bunch of buddies who are from Hawaii. They come here and then they don't get as many waves as they want. They're frothing so hard. And then they move back to Hawaii and then they're like, I can't be bothered. It's not perfect and glassy overhead offshore. So I'm not going to go out. I'm like, dude, it's pumping. Maybe the winds aren't perfect, but they're just like, you're like, I can't be bothered now. You just get spoiled and, and I can begin to see how you can become burned out and just like it becomes more monotonous and it doesn't become as interesting as the way it used to be when you can't surf all the time. So if you're training super hard, then going and surfing must be like the best feeling ever. You just let the ocean wash over you and just washes everything away, right?
It was the best. We would have double days in the summertime at UCLA, and then my college roommate and I would just drive down to like Venice, or we'd drive up to Zuma. And it was just like kids again, because I actually grew up with this guy. So we're just laughing and just having the best time. It was so fun.
Nice. That sounds great. And so what happened so at some point, okay, where did it go after this playing soccer? Like what happened there?
Yeah.
So you walked onto the UCLA team, and then what happened next?
Then just, achieved that goal, but it just, as anybody who ever tries to play a professional sport or any kind of sport realizes, you're always in a dogfight trying to like fight your way into the lineup. And that's how that was for me for 2 years. Again, found myself in a situation where now I wasn't I wasn't talented anymore. Like everybody was way more talented.
Yeah.
And just to like quickly go through it, basically sat on the bench most of the time. But we did wind up winning a national championship, which was really cool. And then I was somebody, and still am somebody, who really believes in, doing what they say they're going to do. So I was telling everybody the whole time, like, I'm going to Europe, going to walk on. And so we went to meet George W. Bush for winning the national championship. And I had the bus driver drop me off at the airport, and I flew to Belgium and started walking on, started just cold calling different teams all over. I called every single first division team and every single second division team. And in the first month I got 2 trials and walked on, and the first division team was way out of my league. The second division team I could have played with, I know for a fact, but I had one shot. I had a bad tryout and blew it. And after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm done, dude. This has been a great adventure for the last 5-6 years. But I don't want to keep doing this anymore. Like my body's fucked. Being, my trainer, I'm my manager. I'm like doing everything that a lot of people have multiple people doing for them. I just didn't have it in me anymore. So I called up a buddy and said, hey, I'm not coming home for at least a year. Do you want to travel around the world with me? And he's like, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So he met me in Denmark, and we just started hitchhiking east, and we made our way through, like Sweden, Norway, Finland, Mongolia, China, like Russia,
India. Man. You guys went way east.
Yeah, we did the whole thing. And then after 1 year, I was broken from that one as well. That was a really gnarly trip. And flew home from, I left Indo and was like, told him goodbye. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. He wound up staying like 2 more years on the road. And I flew back, landed, so stoked to be home. I'm 24 years old now, and parked cars for like 9 months. And then I had an opportunity to move to Nicaragua after 9 months. And then that's where, again, my surf journey began again, like there.
Got it. I was wondering how surfing would come back into the equation. And so I'm really curious about that. And what I'm really curious about is like, you went from being like an elite athlete, you're on the UCLA team, you guys won a national championship, you're trying out for, pro soccer teams in Europe and whatnot. And then how that mindset and approach, because you talked about the structure that you had as a soccer player and the intensity and all that kind of stuff and the competitiveness. And then you come back to surfing. I'm really curious how that is going to overlay and influence things when you get back into surfing. But
great question, Van. You're such an intuitive person and very good at your job, dude. This is something I've dissected within myself over and over again, because that competitive nature had just been so exhausted at UCLA. And I was able to then dive back into surfing completely for myself. As a young, teenager, there's a lot of ego involved. I wanted to be as good as my friends. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to get the hottest chick. I wanted to impress everybody. And now it was just pure for me. And the competitiveness that I exhausted playing soccer, now when I was out in the water and you paddle battle people and stuff like that, like I had no attachment to it anymore, because like nobody knew where I just come from. Like I could just look at, like, I was like the ping pong champion of Gigante for like forever, right? Because I had no attachment to winning or losing, dude. All I cared about was technique and just doing things right. And I could I didn't have it. And so I could transfer that into surfing. I wouldn't get as frustrated with myself as I used to. I wasn't competing with anybody. I was just pure, all about trying to improve my surfing to the best of my ability to get to a place I really wanted to get to, but didn't know if I could.
Right. And it's so interesting because so much of surfing is a battle with your ego. You think that's why when you listen to like the best pro surfers, like all their coaches or a lot of their coaches are basically like their psychologists, right? It's really about getting out of your own way. Cause like, you have that fear of falling, that fear of judgment. Those are all things that inhibit your ability to perform good technique, and once you're free of that, it sounds like that opened up this whole new chapter in your surfing and it made you a better surfer. So like, what would you describe, like, so what was it like, your progression when you kind of had come back from this stint? We talked about it in a kind of conceptual level, that it freed you and you were able to move past this competitive nature. But like, what did that like mean in a concrete way? Like, how did it improve? Were there like these big changes in your technique or these discoveries, or what was it? What was that process like for you?
It was slow. So at first I took a lot of what I learned psychologically from soccer and applied it. I've always had one speed, and that's just go as fast as I can. Seriously, like when it comes to surfing too, like when I was growing up, I was like, no, I'm just go super fast and not do any turns. And one of my soccer coaches, Mike Gartland, I'll give him a shout out, told me that. He's like, dude, you're a one pace player, man. Like you need to become a two pace player. Like you need to pick your head up, look around, see options, and then make a decision. Don't just get the ball and run, dude, because that's not that useful. It is at times, but like, and it was the same with surfing. Right. So I started to really apply that when I was in Nicaragua. Okay, like, dude, slow down, slow your mind down, dude. Take a breath. And luckily enough, the timing of me arriving in Nicaragua in 2005, where I arrived at, there was nobody there, like in our area. So I was surfing Colorado by myself most days. And like,
what?
Yeah. Yeah. And
dude, like I mean, I go there and it's like 100 dudes in the water is what it feels like.
So like 2005 through 2006, aside from peak season when like JJ and Lance would come down and then like Tom would come up from San Juan, like there was nobody, dude. It was just me, myself, and I, and maybe a few guests occasionally, because we were just starting our outfit, Giants Fit Surf. And I really had just a buffet of waves with Manzanillo as well, and then Ponga drops, to really just have that variety and take my time and know there's going to be another wave. Another thing I learned in soccer, the most important play of the day is the next play. So you have to let go of what just happened, whether it was positive or negative. And so every wave that I blew, I just say to myself, the most important wave is the next one, dude. Just paddle back out. Who cares? Yeah. And I just on repeat every single day. And, but I had developed so many bad habits from growing up with that one speed that I didn't know I had. And it,
like what? What's an example?
I'll give you a bunch of examples, but real quick, like this is also the era of surfing where like the only people who were getting filmed were the kids who like had their sponsors sending people down to film them and like get photos of them. So like I never saw myself surf. So I had a very whack image of myself that I learned later of how I surfed. And I was completely wrong. I thought I was way better than I was. So anyways, the first, I'd say 2 years was just me just making the same mistakes, but I had a better psychological grasp on things. And then, do you know Tony Roberts? He's
Tony Roberts.
Yeah, he was like the staff photographer for all Central America for Quicksilver. He was on the Crossing. And he came up from Costa Rica as Colorado started to like blow up. And he was one of the guys that like was surfing Colorado before anybody knew about it. And I got to know him. And he's a straight shooter, dude. That guy does not mince his words, and he'll give it to you straight. So he was shooting on the beach one day. I came up. There was another guy looking over his shoulder at some of his photographs, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Like you're gonna make a little bit of money off that guy." He's like, "That guy will never buy my photos." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because he thinks he surfs way better than he does, and everything I just showed him, he thinks that like I didn't get the right shot because he was surfing way better than that." But when he was saying that was just piercing my soul and heart because he was talking to me as well. And I knew it.
Right.
And, I went home from there. I walked back to Gigante thinking about that, going like, all right, dude, like first things first, let's see how many photos Tony has of me because I got to see myself surf. And then once I did, it was horrifying. And,
you're like, I need bleach and I'm going to pour it straight into my eyes right now because
it was really, really huge ego blow for real. And so, so then I decided that's it. All right. Technique is where I'm lacking. I'm not doing the turns I thought I was doing. There's no playbook on how to figure this out. So I just went back and started just going through, we had a little VHS player, all the surf videos. I think I was watching like Sons of Fun and like, Andy and Rasta's video. What was that one called? When they like
Andy and Rasta.
When they're contrasting their like Blue Horizon. Blue Horizon.
Yeah. That's the one.
And I would just slow mo all these professional turns trying to look for patterns. And slowly but surely the arm patterns started to like show themselves to me. And then comparing and contrasting those with Tony Roberts' photos, started seeing like I wasn't doing any of that. And then I had this, buffet of waves where I could go out and test over and over and over again. I mean, but to be honest, like within the first week of finally identifying the pattern of what was being done by the pros and then going out and testing, like I could see a difference immediately. So that then sent me down a completely different path of progression. Like progression started coming so rapidly and
that's awesome.
Just leaps and bounds. I mean, I've been doing this now almost 20 years and I sucked. Now it's like in 6 months, my turns are like, I'm doing like legitimate turns now that I consider legitimate,
so awesome.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because it's so interesting that you can go 20 years without even realizing that you're not surfing well.
Yeah.
And I think that there are people that surf there. I mean, not to say they don't surf well, but you can surf just because you've been surfing for a long time doesn't guarantee that you are going to be necessarily doing good maneuvers,
Yeah.
It does take a lot of attention and detail and really paying attention and dialing things in, which is, I think, is interesting. So then you started to feel this whole nother level in progression. If you can think back then, what was like the big lever for you? Was it like, what was a big unlock for you? Like technique wise, or was it just like you're just watching the footage and you're like, all right, I'm going to do my arms like that, I'm going to do my legs like that? Was there any one thing that you think was like holding you up, like a big a barrier that once you did that one thing that really unlocked things for you?
Yeah, there's two things. So number one, the first thing was the arm movement, and it wasn't even the movement. What I was doing was I would pump down the line with my right, because I'm goofy, my right arm bent in front of my chest like a skater, kind of a skater style approach, which when it comes to now doing a turn, you have to get that lead arm like out and shoulder open to make that round turn. And that's time. Those are microseconds that you need. And you dig rail a lot when you surf like that. There's a few examples of like pros who can do it, but they are able to maneuver their body really quickly back into the right position to have the right technique to make those turns. But so that was the first huge unlock. Once I realized like my lead arm was completely wrong on my front side, and I started I always say to myself, open palm and shoulder, and just like every turn, open palm and shoulder. And that just unlocked my off the tops and my roundhouses and cutbacks and stuff like that to where I wasn't digging my rail anymore. And then the second thing was foot movement. My back foot was always a little bit too far up on the tail pad. And so I didn't have the maximum control over my surfboard, which once those two things combine, dude, I was like, that was a full man turn that looks like a professional. When Tony would then start snapping photos, I was like, that was a sick turn. I was patting myself on the back. It felt really awkward. I mean, it still feels so unnatural for me because I have so many bad habits ingrained in my DNA at this point. But the turns that I'm like in my brain, like that was a sick slash. I see it on footage. I'm like, that looks lame. But then the one that I know I just techniqued out and just nerded out on it and had time to nerd out on it, the turn looks really good.
How did it feel the first time you saw like yourself do a proper turn that you're like actually proud of? Like how stoked were you?
Dude, I mean, that was for me the biggest moment because I never thought I would get to that level as a surfer. I mean, as we talked, like 20 years of doing what I thought were good turns, finding out I wasn't, it's got so demoralizing. So am I going to have to now spend 20 more years to get to where I want to be? So like, I didn't think I'd ever get to where I am right now. And people can see me surf and judge me. I don't care. But for me, I'm so proud of the way I surf in that like I can do turns that are legitimately good turns in my mind and visually speaking,
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks. Right. That's so awesome, man. That is the best feeling. And it's so interesting that just these two, what seem like, I mean, I think the problem is if you don't know what you're doing wrong, then they're going to be very big obstacles to overcome, right? And a lot of surfers aren't aware of what they're actually doing and what proper technique is, so they kind of never get there. But yeah, just those two things led to those huge unlocks. So I want to drill down on those a little bit further because, like the foot thing, for example, moving your foot around, that's something probably, a lot of surfers know about, but it's just hard to retrain your foot to move around because everybody's so, it's an ego thing actually. You're scared to lose the wave. You're scared that you're going to, you're going to step off, you're going to get unbalanced and you're going to do something. So how are you able to retrain, moving your feet around? Or were you just like, all right, I'm going to get on a wave and I'm just going to move my feet around. I'm going to fall off. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it. Or like, what was your approach?
So mantras, it's been a big part of my coaching since I started the Surf Pro techniques. And it's creating a three word max, I think is the most I recommend, but it's like 3 words that are going to trigger your mind and body to react in a certain way to, take off the autopilot that happens to all of us as we surf. We have this survival mechanism, right? And it's overwhelming us at all times when we're in this natural environment that could hurt us. And then especially when we stand up, we're, like you just mentioned, like most people are stuck in the frozen foot phase, even though they can kind of do turns, but they can't lift their back foot up and they can't adjust their feet. They've been just surfing like that for 30 years. So mantras. So it's like when I started really getting into this and breaking it down and like pulling back all the layers of technique, it's like I'd say to myself, paddle hard, pop up quick, move back foot, paddle hard, pop up quick, move back foot, as I was paddling into a wave. And then that would set everything in motion. So when I did stand up, move my back foot, and I'd get to the point where it's like a microsecond. I pop up, bad foot placement, move it back super quick, and now I'm off and running, And I mean, unfortunately, not everyone has waves that they have enough time to do that on. Like I get some people have just super quick shore break that's really walled. That makes that very difficult. But if they could find something that gives them a little bit more time, you start to then build that muscle memory, and it gets easier and easier and easier.
Yeah. Well, I just did a podcast with, I think it's Kelsey Gordon, and she had a really good tip actually. And since this is part of the discussion, I think it's a really good one. But basically, like let's say the wave closes out and you're just riding the whitewater. Just practice moving your feet around there, because like it's no consequence. You're still riding the wave, and you just get used to moving your foot around, and then like it just retrains your brain to be comfortable moving your foot around. So that one's
I love that. I'd never thought about that. That's genius. I mean, because everybody can ride the whitewater and practice. That's genius. I love it.
Every wave you catch, that's a bad one. All right, I'm just going to move my feet around, and you get practice.
100%. Like, and you instantly feel a difference. I mean, the second you move your back foot back, you have max control. If you get it far enough back, you'll notice a difference. And now you have that memory of what it felt like.
Yeah, totally. And then the opening the arms up, and, if we're doing a front side turn, that's why front side turns are so much harder than backside turns, because it's so unintuitive to open up in that direction. And then if your leading arm is like in the way while you're trying to turn, it's like, it's impossible. And what's been so interesting to me doing that is, people think they're opening up their shoulders, but they're not opening up their shoulders enough, right? I mean, I know it's been this whole evolution for me where it's like, all right, I'm getting better and better. And then you see the footage and you're like, no. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, my left shoulder is like behind me, and I'm looking my right hand. I can see my right hand pointing up to the whitewater, and they're like, okay, there, I finally made it. I've rotated my upper body enough. But were there, like, how did you dial that in? Was it just like really just drilling in, like committing to opening up all the way, even if, like, what was your approach to that?
Again, back to the mantras, just reminding myself, like, and I forget the actual like word trigger I would use, but don't let front arm cross in front of your body. So I literally would just like surf down the line with my arm sticking straight out, pointing to the shore. In my mind, when I saw it on like camera, it was never that defined, but I would literally just make sure that my arm was levered out, pointing towards shore as I pumped down the wave. And then when I engaged my turn, I would rotate open my palm and shoulder, and then engage, my swinging left arm. And then that would just create this beautiful access pivot point, and my weight distribution would be more naturally in the right place on my surfboard. Then everything would flow way better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man, well, and, I think what's interesting as well, which is why I think people need like surf coaches like you, is that I feel like everybody has their own sticking points. Like for you, it might have been like what was going on in your front arm, but for somebody else, it could totally be what's going on with their back arm, or, your issue is that you tend to go too fast. Other people's issues might be like they don't generate enough speed, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like part of surf coaching must be about giving someone the right unlock at that point in time for where they are in their surfing. I mean, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I can see where you're going with it, but what I've observed is that naturally we all do very similar things unconsciously to make a turn. Just it's our it's physical nature, whatever you say, like our physical movements are the same when you try to twist at your hips, right? So that's one aspect of my surf coaching that I knew immediately I could accelerate with, was that I just stripped away all the unnecessary things to talk about and just focus on the one thing that would give you the best bang for your buck, the instant result. Because a lot of the surf coaches I see bombard you with movements that you're going to naturally do, whether you know you're doing them or not. So there's no need to be pointing them out, in my opinion. So to answer your question, like one person having this issue, one person, it's not really like that actually. When you start to really break down the body mechanics of human beings, it's everyone has a lot of the similar issues. And you can, I mean, I always feel like I'm repeating myself when I do these like instructional videos for people because it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So part of your surf coaching was, so you were basically having people send you footage and then you would review
Correct.
it. And you've probably done this
hundreds of times,
tons and tons and
hundreds
tons
of times.
And they all have this, that must be interesting to build up that memory bank.
I mean, I could,
and it's all the same
give you the secrets right now to your audience, dude. Here's the secrets. I mean, if they can stand up and surf, right? If there's somebody who's now like upper intermediate to advanced surfer, their back foot's 100% of the time not getting far enough back, for sure.
Yeah.
If they're struggling with their turns, their back foot's not far enough back. Then their upper body, the lead arm crossing over for sure for like not 9, I'd say like in the upper 80% of people is an issue. You know, they're going to engage their turn and their weight distribution because of their body positioning and where their arms are placed is digging their rail and throwing them off. You know, and then I get a lot into the psychology of things and a few other things, but like 100% of the time it's foot placement on the surfboard, always. And then, you know, a few little tweaks, upper body. I mean, but on your front side, everyone's going to swing, you know, like I'm going to swing my left arm in the same way as every other goofy footer does around the world. You're going to swing you're a regular foot, I'm assuming. So you're going to swing your right arm the exact same way as everybody else. So all you have to worry about is your lead arm. And then that's where I step in and say, hey, check out what your lead arm is doing in this situation, that situation. And it's like 9 out of 10 times you're doing the same thing with your lead arm.
Yeah.
And you combine lead arm and foot placement, I mean, you're halfway there.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's super cool. It is interesting to think about that whole data bank, and you've seen so many patterns and they all have the same exact issues. That's cool. What about, okay, you know, just getting back to kind of your personal progression, right? And you spending time down there. So you go through this process, you go deep into this hole of like trying to solve this puzzle, and then you finally unlock the puzzle, right? And then what came next? Was it more, then it became just more of this process of refinement and just getting it better and tweaking it better and better and better. And then also what happened to your relationship with surfing once you kind of had reached this goal in a way of like, I got to figure this problem, and then you got it. Like, did it change your relationship to surfing, or were you just as same stoked and now you're just like, I'm just doing bigger turns on bigger waves and, you know, like kind of like that? What was that like?
Refinement was the first thing for sure, because I'm obsessive. I want to be perfect. I want to do the most perfect top round turn, you know, like Tom Carroll style, just that pipe, just like ripping a huge top turn or something like that. Like just excellent. I needed it to be excellent, perfect.
Right.
And so that was years of obsession. And then, because it's a land of lefts and I'm a goofy footer, some waves started getting boring because it's the same turn over and over again. So then you start experimenting with boards, because that gives you a little bit different feeling. And you're riding boards in certain circumstances that you wouldn't normally, but it gives you a different feeling. So you get that stoke and joy back. And then that gets a little old. Sorry, do you want to say something?
And actually, before you go there, right? Because so in the beginning, we were talking about, you know, just getting your turns to be like good. Now we're talking about getting your turns from good to great, like these Tom Carroll turns. Like, what was the magic sauce that allowed you to do that? Like, was there, I mean, I know it's refinement, but like, what was it that you were refining? What were you focused on?
Where I started my turn on the wave. So in the beginning, it was just making the turn look and feel excellent, but then doing it on the portion of the wave that really optimizes for the maneuver. You know, you watching the pros take it all the way to the top and just destroying the lip, but without blowing their tail out. Like, I mean, that is a very teachable thing in a very unique way and like specific way, but it's like that's where my mind went. Like, okay, where I start my turn, where I finish my turn, because I was blowing my fins out so much because I was just so out of control, and just refining it and trying to understand the mechanics of where to do the turns in the correct portion of the face of the wave.
Yeah, I've actually been, I mean, I do the same thing. I watch footage of the pros and I just watch it on repeat, and I'm like going super slow-mo and inspecting every frame. And those are the exact turns that I've been obsessed with as well, where they look like they're coming into a section where they're going to just be doing a re-entry off the lip, but then they just have a little slight curve in it, and then they carve all the way down. And I'm just like, oh God, that looks so sick. Just
there's a turn,
but it takes a whole nother level of commitment, because it's interesting. I see myself going for re-entries, and I'm like, I should have been trying to do a carve in that section. And if I'd done a carve in that section, then I would be doing the kind of turn that I'm actually wanting to do, So it's this interesting process.
Yeah, John does those really well, where he takes the lip on a very steep face and does a very natural looking turn from top to bottom on it. But I don't have issues with John, but like he is one of the examples I mentioned earlier where it's like his actual technique and approach, from my opinion, is I don't want to say flawed because he's got 2 world titles, but like it's unnatural. Him and Dane Reynolds they both let their lead arm drift in front of their bodies, but right when they go to engage, they're able to rip that arm straight back into the correct technique and area for the turn. So when you watch,
are you talking about the leading arm? Are you talking about when they're doing the bottom turn, they like rotate? Because a lot of people swing the back arm back, but they're rotating with their front arm forward as well.
So yeah, it looks like their front arm is drifting in front of their body. Where for me, when I was learning about this, like that would just completely inhibit me from doing the top turn. But they have the ability to like pull their arm back just in the nick of time to open up that palm and shoulder to then rotate the turn off the top. It's magical to watch. Obviously, we all love watching them surf, but like from a technique perspective, they're like the Picassos of the world. They can do it right until they can just do it wrong if they want. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, and I'd always thought that like if you put that front arm too far forward when you're going up, you're kind of disengaging the rail, So, and it's going to make it harder to rotate all the way back around. But maybe that's the reason why they're doing it, because they're so powerful. They want like you for a punch, you pull your arm back to throw it forward. They're just like, their level of power is like, all right, I'm throwing my front arm all the way over there so I can rip it all the way back kind of deal.
That's a good point I'd never considered, and that would make sense. They're at such a level now where they can generate more power by just going completely off the reservation, dude.
Yeah, I remember seeing this one wave by John where, I mean, we're talking about like trying to go vertical, but literally the wave looked like it was like the lip was coming down, and he carves like basically upwards into the lip and like just draws the craziest line that I've ever seen any surfer period do. I'm just like, so much of being a good surfer, it feels like, I mean, once you master the fundamental technique skills, really it feels like it becomes more and more about like your relationship with the wave and just accessing the more powerful critical parts of the wave, right?
100%.
And getting comfortable there, because there's so much more risk in those critical, powerful parts of the wave, right?
100%.
And so it's like this mental thing. And you talk about how there are some mental unlocks for you. What kind of tips would you give mentally for somebody that's trying to, do these more critical turns and more powerful turns?
So the mantra thing is huge for me, and that would be the only one.
Yeah.
Like I compare it to, recently I heard on Joe Rogan, this guy who created Shot IQ, where he trains professional bow hunters how to prepare for a shot and be so in control that they can literally like pull the trigger halfway, and if they want to then not take the shot, they can let it, whatever it's called. And it hit me so hard. That's what I was doing with my mantras when it came to everything. So like we were talking about earlier, like when you spin around and you paddle for a wave, intuitively, instinctually, you have the survival mechanism kick in, because now you have this energy coming from behind you can't see. You're relying on instincts. And for all of us, no matter at what level you are, because if you get into big waves, you're going to feel it again. You have to figure out a way to suppress the instinct to stand up. Because 9 out of 10 times you're going to stand up too early and you're going to get fucking drilled, from beginner to big wave surfer. So like when he was talking about what he's developed within his training process, it's like the same as my mantras. You're trying to figure out a way to suppress these instincts that are giving you inaccurate signals, wrong signals to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so from turns, again, the mantras, saying whatever you're trying to accomplish, if it's like for me and my lead arm, like don't let lead arm cross body, don't let lead arm cross body, don't let lead arm. And I'm just the whole wave. That's all I'm saying to myself, even if I'm not even going to do a turn. Like I've really blown so many waves on purpose just to drive home this, like, just to drive this into my DNA so I don't do it anymore.
Interesting.
And it's really just trying to override this natural circuitry that we have that's giving us false information under these circumstances. So, and that's all I've ever come up with for myself that's worked. I don't have any other tricks. It's just literally talking yourself through it, blowing waves, being okay with it, and doing it over and over and over again.
But I mean, it makes sense, and simpler is better in a lot of ways, especially for something like surfing where there's just so much going on. You need it to be as simple as possible, right? So I like that idea. So what mantra do you use right now when you're trying to rip a big front side turn in a critical part of the wave?
How about
don't let front arm get in the way, or what?
Oh yeah, today I did a turn just like that for sure. It's small where I'm at right now, and I had an opportunity to do a turn. And I was just sitting there going, don't let lead arm, I was like going to like pointed straight towards the beach with my lead arm, and did a turn I was really proud of, and came to the beach, and my buddy was like, dude, that was a sick turn. So, but I think for me right now, cause I don't get to do a lot of turns for where I'm at right now, wave wise, I'm back into the phase of like paddle hard, pop up quick, paddle hard, pop up quick. Like that's all I think about. Just going back to the basics, because some of the waves I'm surfing at the moment are scary, to be honest.
That sounds fun though.
Yeah.
And so actually coming back to something that you said before, people popping up too quick, especially in waves of consequence. Like this is a shift that I've been making mentally myself in surfing hollower waves. As well, as it's like I've been trying to, because you're right, you want to be like paddling as hard as you can, and you're like, you have to get comfortable visually with your head like peering over the ledge of like this wave that looks like it's going to land on you. Like you can see the lip, you're looking down the line and you just see that lip beginning to throw and getting super steep, and it's like mentally just being acclimated. Hey, this is actually where I want to be, instead of like, and then just and then taking extra paddles and going down the line and popping up. But so much of it seems like this desensitization process where you just get comfortable in those, more critical situations. And so paddling harder, obviously that is the key. Have there been any other unlocks for you, or things that you've been learning as you're pushing yourself in these more challenging waves?
Equipment matters a lot, but not as much as you think when you're, an average surfer. I have so many guys reaching out and saying like, I just got these new fins. They're called like Super Ripper Fast Fins or something, whatever the names are of these fins these days. And I'm just like, that makes no sense. And that makes no difference in the way you're about to surf today, dude. So equipment matters. Like fins will matter at an elite level. You will notice a difference. Like I've had boards that didn't work and changed my fins out and it worked magically, but you won't notice your fins at all for a long time. Your board as well, like there's just so many gimmicks these days to get people to buy boards. And like, I mean, I could go on for hours on this stuff, but I would say if you're struggling to get up and ride a wave, your board's just not big enough. You need to have more volume. It's got to be a way bigger board.
Right. And
that's what I try to convey to like 99% of the people who reach out to me is just like, you're just not riding the right equipment. You need to You need to ride the right equipment. I'm struggling with that where I'm at right now. I came with the wrong equipment, and that then creates a snowball effect and a domino effect of like, well, I'm putting myself in dangerous situations with the wrong equipment, and the consequences are real. And it inhibits my ability to focus on the areas I need to focus on to stay safe and ride waves. So, at this point, I've stepped up my game. I got a lot of the right equipment, and I feel way better about everything at this point.
Right. It's always better to err on the side of having too much volume than too little volume.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. More volume, more fun, they say, or something like that.
Foam is your
form
friend.
Is your friend. Yeah. And like, I'm 43, and the last 5 years haven't surfed that much. I'm getting back into it, and like mobility has been a huge issue for me. Like, I'm getting a lot better because I'm surfing every day. I've surfed like 95 of the last 100 days, and my mobility is coming back, but it's taken 3 months, and it's important, dude. You got to maintain it. I think surfing's the best way to maintain it, but if you can't, you got to be doing something that engages your whole body. So it's like doing land pop-ups or burpees or whatever your thing is that you're doing. It's important for mobility reasons.
So what mobility issues have you been struggling with?
Neck and like hip. My right hip from my right ankle's destroyed from soccer, so it's like collapsing. So now it's affecting my right hip, and so like pig dogging backside, and my neck too. Like pig dogging, getting that right hip to engage in the right way, and then looking up. As I'm trying to drop into some waves that I'm already scared to be dropping in on. It's like that's been hard. So, but now 3 months of doing it, like I'm back to feeling more comfortable in that like stance, and it's getting better. But I have a whole routine in the morning now. I do like 30 minutes of neck stretches, and
Wow. But what is the neck coming from? Did you have an injury to your neck that caused something, or is it just
it's genetics and soccer compression, like headers? It's like I have a deteriorating disc in in my like upper neck, and it's created some like issues. And I think just my genetics, like my spine just naturally is more straight, so gravity's pulling it forward. So it's created a bunch of just muscles getting way too tight, trying to hold my neck up.
Yeah.
So.
Oh wow, interesting. Wait, so we kind of skipped this one piece that I'm curious about. So you moved to Nicaragua. You were there for a while. And then is this when you were in Nicaragua, is that when you were doing the Surf Pro Technique videos and whatnot?
Yeah, so that started, so I did the first 5 years till 2010 running just pure surf retreats for people who could surf. And in 2010, we sold that, me and my partners, and I stayed and worked with the new owner, and then stayed basically on and off until 2017, continuing to run retreats. And I started kind of wanting to have the freedom to explore the world a little bit more without being location dependent. So I started seeking out and understanding more about this digital nomad community, and like, well, what skill sets I might have to give people of value. And all I knew was surfing. So I started developing the idea of like maybe trying to put some stuff online on YouTube, and then maybe creating a course around it. And so 2015 is kind of when I started the digital journey into course creation, YouTube, and teaching online. But from 2010 to 2015, then because Nicaragua just gotten so crowded, there was no market for like advanced surfers looking for uncrowded waves, which is how we used to market it. Now it's like everyone's parked at Colorado, and a lot of them can surf, but like I could see that they could surf a lot better if they just knew that they could move their foot like 4 inches back. They'd be ripping the turns that they'd probably wanted to rip for the last 20 years. And so I started concocting more ideas around like trying to help that type of surfer, but realistically, like they weren't asking me for advice, and I wasn't just offering it up. So I was just pushing people into waves and teaching them how to just kind of do the fun stuff the whole time, trying to like refine the message of like, okay, if this person is serious about this, what could I say to them in this hour that's actually going to help them progress really rapidly in the next month to 6 months. So that's kind of where the surf instruction started, was like 2010 through 2000.
So you were helping beginner surfers as well.
Yeah. I mean, because that was the market. I mean, it still is the market in a lot of ways. Like all my friends who run surf retreats, like they just get beginners, unless they have a really well-established surf camp and they've been around forever, or they're like in Indo where it's like beginners aren't really going to go on a boat trip,
Right. Besides obviously riding the right board, what's your best piece of advice for a beginner surfer?
Find the right wave. I mean, you have... Well, I guess you have limited options depending on where you come from. So I don't ever want to like shit on, somebody's situation, but I get a lot of people writing me. Like I just find myself, not figuring this out. I've been at this now for 6 months and it's not getting better. And the first question, I just had a guy email me 2 days ago. And I was like, send me your location. What is the wave that you surf every day? Before I answer any of these questions, I want to see what you're surfing every day. And then I'll start checking the waves in the area. And usually it's like, dude, you can't surf that wave every day. You need to go down to this wave. Based on the photos, this is what it looks like to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But like the wave itself makes a huge difference in how fast you can progress.
Totally. And is it usually that they're picking a wave that's too advanced for them, or it's just not enough, like it's not good enough wave for them?
Too advanced. I mean, shitty waves, like mushy, shitty waves are great to begin on, as we know. So, you coming from like the Newport Beach area, it's like I'm taking clients up to Dog Beach in Huntington, which isn't ideal, but it's at least better than Newport or Huntington, by the pier. At least gives you on the right tide a little bit more of a mushy wave to like help beginners. But you're looking like for a beginner, you want to go to like a San Onofre or, a Waikiki, something like that. Take out a stand-up paddleboard, like make it so you win like on your first session, and don't get demoralized because you rode a 6.6 or 6.0 at Newport Beach and just got pounded.
Yeah, I mean, I see it all the times. Like all the good surfers will be at one spot, and then you'll just see this line of beginners just literally just sitting on the shoulder, just waiting around, like not catching any waves. I'm just like, dude, if you just paddle down there's waves down there, you're going to have way more fun and you're going to learn way quicker. Like, why are you trying to compete for these waves when you're not going to be able to compete? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a tough topic to bring up out in the lineup. Like, I'm always willing to offer up friendly, tips to people, but as we both know, it's like everyone has an idea of how they're going to do it and want to do it their way.
Right. Got it. Okay, so you were in Nicaragua, and so how did you, because I know that you also have a podcast right now. Yep. You want to tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. It's a passion project of mine. So over the years of travel and being in Nicaragua, I met just so many unique, beautiful people. And a lot of them, I would say, don't fit into mainstream society, which is why like we all find ourselves in these little backwater places trying to do what we love. And I just started just listening to their stories and fell in love with their stories and thought that the world should hear them as well. So the title of the podcast is called Misfits and Rejects. And I always like cognitive dissonance. I think those two words, even though they have negative connotations, like the way they clash in your brain is interesting because the message is so positive and so beautiful. What I'm trying to convey, I hope I'm doing it in a good way, but I'm always trying to honor and elevate these people's stories. But yeah, like episode 4, Dale Dagger, like the guy sailed the Pacific for like 20 years and then shipwrecked in Nicaragua and was so broke he never left. And then just through like sheer ingenuity and like obviously a little bit of luck, like started selling real estate and like did okay, landed on his feet. And then there's like Brian Friedrichs. I think he's like episode 7. Like he was a drug smuggler for years and he got sentenced to 10 years in a Mexican prison. And
oh my God,
served 2, but he was just doing marijuana, like not coke or nothing like that. But like when you really,
I wouldn't want to go to Mexican prison though. I'll tell you that.
He said he slept sitting up under a table for 2 years because the cells were like packed with like 28 people and there's room for 4. So like his spot was under a desk, just sitting up all day, all night for 2 years. It's brutal.
What? Yeah. Wow.
And I've just traveled the world trying to capture as many stories as possible. And what I've learned is that, the ones that I was initially inspired by are usually the ones who don't want to talk to me because they don't want to ever be found. So I've definitely had to adjust. And I talk to a lot of just people who have unique stories, there's a lot of digital nomads I really admire who live these really unique lives traveling the world and making a lot of money just on their laptop. So I've tried to capture that side of things. And then, just interviewed a girl she's in Mauritius right now, but her goal is to go to all 54 countries in Africa and just help break the stereotypes and the stigmas of how dangerous Africa is. So I thought that was really cool. I brought her on to talk about that. We talked about Nigeria the whole time. But yeah, these stories are just remarkable, and these people are beautiful and they have a lot to share. And I think we could learn a lot from them in their life, especially in, America, where the media is just sensationalizing everything. I'm in Mexico now, and it's my family is terrified of Mexico, and I'm on the ground, and I go home and I tell them what's going on. They don't believe me. And it's I just had coffee this morning with friends. They've been driving around Mexico and Central America for the last 2 years and never had an issue. And it's if I can help break some of those images and stereotypes and get more people to enjoy their life in any way, shape, or form, whether it's traveling or just quitting a job they hate or ending a relationship they're miserable in, that's my dream.
That's rad. Yeah. There's so many misconceptions about Mexico, Central America that are absolutely not true. If you're not looking for trouble, you're probably not going to get in any trouble if you're smart about things.
Yeah.
It's silly. And your podcast sounds awesome. Surfing, some people might not, especially those that are getting into it now, but surfing was this rebel, outcast, misfit, reject sport.
Yeah.
Surfers were considered why are you sitting around the ocean for hours? And I still ask myself that question, but it is kind of this different kind of activity. And I think, all those stories that you're telling, in a way they're living the dream, right? They're doing what they're really passionate about. They're not holding back, and that's an inspiration. So anybody that is thinking about making those kind of changes or just needs some inspiration, it sounds like a great podcast to listen to.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. I love it. I'd love to turn it into a docu-series. So if any of your audience, knows anything about making documentaries, or I just think that the locations I find myself in with some of these characters, if we had a camera crew with us, or at least one camera that someone knew how to use, we could capture some really cool stuff. So
that sounds awesome. And so are you still doing surf coaching as well?
I do. Yeah, I have my YouTube channel, which you noted doesn't have any or it has videos, but I kind of quit after a while because I kind of got to the point where, like I said, all the information that I have on my YouTube channel is what I would tell you if you reached out to me. Yeah. So the only difference is that when you send me your footage and I voice over it, you get to see specifically what you're doing wrong, which is hard for people to visualize unless they can compare and contrast with the examples that I give. So as of now, the videos are up. If you can find them, Surf Pro Techniques, Surf Progression Techniques, they're there, they're helpful. And my email's all over the comments, because anybody who comments, I leave an email, or I leave my email saying, hey, reach out, I'm happy to help. And if you want me just to respond via email, it's free. If you want to go deeper and you want to send me footage, then that costs money. So that's kind of how I work it, and anyone's welcome to reach out. I'm always happy to help. Like I said, just ask me questions. I'll answer for free in a very detailed way that you could apply, but seeing yourself is always most powerful.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for joining, Chapin. Yeah, it was a pleasure. This was awesome. So yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah, Van, I really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.